The agenda is the hearings panel report to the council on the proposed amendments to the Freedom Camping Bylaw. And we've got... Hi. I'm just getting everyone to reintroduce themselves because we've got a new council, so...
Thank you. Yes, my name's Ruth Littlewood and I'm a policy analyst with the strategic policy team, and Helen Beaumont, who you've already met,
yes,
is manager.
Thank you. Andrew, you sat on the, you chaired the hearings panel, is that
correct?
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So I'll leave it over to you.
All right. So I'll just make some introductory comments then. Thank you. So it's important to note that this is an interim review of the bylaw. We're all very aware of some of the problems that happened with freedom camping over the 2015-16 summer, and the reason for this interim review really was to resolve some of those issues before the start of the 2016-17 season. That's the reason for the relatively the relatively minor nature of the changes that have been made, which really are to restrict freedom camping to self-contained vehicles across the district, and the other change is to restrict all freedom camping at the areas which are temporarily closed, which were previously the areas where non-self-contained freedom camping could occur. So that's French Farm, Wainui, Winsport Park, Addington and Sticks Mill. So those are the 5 areas where last summer we did have problems with a proliferation of non-self-contained freedom camping. What the changes we're making today, assuming this is approved, would be to restrict all freedom camping in those places, to prohibit freedom camping in those places. Now the recommendations also, this is number 4 in the recommendations in today's agenda, recommend some other issues that be considered for inclusion in the full review of the Freedom Camping Bylaw that will take place at the end of the 2016-17 summer season. There were some things that we perhaps would have liked as a hearing panel to have included and made some changes in this partial review, but time didn't permit that. It's important that we get this in place in time for the 1st of December for the new season, and also some of these recommendations will require more work. So I certainly look forward to more work being done around some of these areas that we're suggesting by way of that recommendation, so that we consider them fully as we make perhaps more substantive changes to the bylaw in 2017 at the end of this season. So I think it's important to look at what we're doing today in the context of there were some things we needed to do on an interim basis to be fit for purpose for the upcoming summer season, and there's a far greater review of the whole bylaw coming up, which will also give us the ability to make some further changes at that time.
So you'd like to move the resolution?
Yes, please.
And do I have a seconder? Tim Scandrett. So, questions? Pauline?
I'm just wondering, where's Brooklands in here? Did you talk about Brooklands? Is that Sticks Mill? Because it's not Brooklands.
No, Brooklands was never in the original.
Wasn't it? Oh, sorry, thank you. I was just wondering why not, because that was a bit of a problem area last year.
So the ban on the non-self-contained is across the whole district, so the non-self-contained will not be able to park up at Brooklands, just as they can't anywhere else.
Yep. Rav?
Yeah, I mean, apologies if you've answered this question in the report somewhere. Do we have enough facilities for non-self-contained camper vans? I mean, where are you planning that they should go?
Well, the amendments mean that they won't be freedom camping within Christchurch City, on Christchurch City controlled land. So in effect, if they wish to freedom camp, as opposed to go to a camping ground or on private land, then they will have to do so outside council controlled land.
Okay, maybe I'll rephrase that slightly. So, I mean, do we have, let's say, are there enough simple campsites, like a dock place where they can still go and there are toilet facilities and rubbish facilities?
Now that's something that certainly needs, and the council has already indicated we need to look at to see whether there are other options appropriate places that they can camp within the city. And in fact, there were submitters who offered to create basically low-cost camping facilities for
Right, okay.
non-self-contained. And clearly in the review we need to look not only at what, if any, needs to be changed about the bylaw, but what other options, what are the non-regulatory options that are needed.
I know, because people are always sending me those types of proposals that actually all you need is, the shower facilities and this facility and that, and keep it quite simple.
Yes.
Okay, so in approving this, which I'm quite happy to do, what's the message we're going to send out to them? Is like, don't come into Christchurch, or just go to a normal camping ground?
Well, we do have we do publicise the opportunities for camping within Christchurch, and for non-self-contained, there are quite a number of camping ground facilities available. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Will you ask, as part of the full review, will you ask what the impact of the Freedom Camping was on their turnover of the regular camping grounds? Because I know that I spoke to a camping ground owner within the city boundary who said that it had a major impact on their turnover. Huge.
Yes.
A third down on the year before.
Yes, that's certainly one of the things we'll be looking at. And in terms of some of the camping ground managers, owners, also are looking at providing, facilities specific to this particular group of campers who perhaps don't require the same range of facilities as, your typical Kiwi camping holiday provides.
Well, Wellington has one right in the central city, which is, it's got a small fee attached to it, but all the facilities are there, and people park up and they go into town and they spend money, and have a great time. So I think there is a sense that we'd like to get to that sort of model, so that freedom campers get the message that they are welcome in our cities, but that the counter to that is that the counterweight to that is that they have to be respectful of the environment that everyone else has to live in.
Yes, and I think no doubt that the monitoring showed that nearly all the campers were compliant and were respectful. There were just far too many of them.
Yeah.
They chose to go, they prefer to, quite a few of them prefer to be in groups with other like-minded campers.
Yep.
And they wanted to be close to facilities, or needed to be close to facilities, and they overwhelmed those facilities.
Yeah, no, that's true. Question, Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions. One was just in relation to the preferred option. Under legal implications, there's no mention of the Bill of Rights. Have you done a Bill of Rights assessment on prohibiting the, non-self-contained camping?
Yes, and indeed, it's we've received legal advice about that. There is no actual Bill of Rights to, for example, stay overnight in a particular area. That's not one of the rights under the Bill of Rights. It's freedom of movement. It's not actually freedom to locate. So yes, there has been a Bill of Rights assessment undertaken.
Is that attached here, or?
It should be. I think you'd have to. I'm sorry. It will be in the report.
I think it was covered in the earlier report. Yeah.
In the yes, that's right. The partial review of. So I'll just flick through to the.
No, that's cool. That's fine. And then just.
Yeah, attachment C.
Right.
And also the requirements of Section 11(2) of the Freedom Camping Act.
Okay, no, that's fine. And then the second question was, I'm just concerned around the lack of infrastructure. So if we put preferred option 1, it doesn't seem to me that people will stop freedom camping in Christchurch, but they'll just go they'll go places, but maybe not concentrate in the areas that we said were okay, as we did last time. So if you looked at the infrastructure that's associated, I know you're going to do that on the peninsula, but I'm worried that you're not doing that in the city as well. Are there any areas in the city that you've thought it would be good to have a bit more looking at the infrastructure on a regular basis, or maybe having a bit more staffing resource in terms of park rangers, for example, just to kind of actively monitor what's going on?
I guess the implementation of this bylaw is something that staff have been thinking a lot about, especially after last summer's experience, and I know that there's a meeting of relevant staff tomorrow to start planning for that.
I would just, feel comfortable that appreciate the Peninsula has unique situation in terms of its infrastructure, particularly things like wastewater. But I think there may be some areas in the city that also, on the fringes of the city, that may have similar issues, and I'd just like to know that there's work going into that.
I guess the answer to that is yes, in terms of that clearly will be part of the full review, to be looking at where there are suitable areas for camping, low cost or possibly free. And infrastructure, of course, is a key part of that. One of the sort of changes that's brought about by the amendments, of course, it'll be much easier to determine whether someone is complying with the bylaw or not, because it's quite clear that you can't non-self-contained freedom camp in the city. And it's a very clear message to send to people.
So if you catch someone, like, you go to Windsport Park and there's someone there, and there's a car there, you knock on the window, you can't sleep here, you need to move on, is there a fine that you give them, or how do you actually enforce that in reality?
Yes, there is a fine, $200. And there will be monitoring, as there is for our other bylaws. And I understand that our compliance and monitoring people have budgeted for compliance and monitoring for the freedom camping bylaw. Well, there is a budget that for compliance with.
Yeah, but that is the existing one. It's not changing as a result of this.
I
know, but the thing is that, I just think that it's important that we kind of move on. So
okay, well, just the only other question I wanted to ask was in terms of infrastructure.
Question number 4 out of the 2 that you nominated. Yes.
Well, they're kind of related, but just the infrastructure. Have we approached central government for access to their infrastructure fund for tourist facilities?
No. There is a whole process that's been going on in relation to it, because there's a separate infrastructure fund for tourism.
Yeah, I support the idea of putting infrastructure in place for freedom camping in the city, but is there any work going on around?
Yes, there is. There is. Okay. I can tell you that, because we've already been talking to all of the Canterbury mayors about access to that fund, because there's more than just our city that's responsible for this. And as I have said on a squillion occasions, we need a more joined up approach. The visitor experience should be the same throughout New Zealand. This is another one of these examples of things handed to local government to deal with on an individual basis instead of collectively thinking up the solution. Phil, did you have a quick question?
To ensure that the areas that have been where it's now prohibited, that in fact that they won't be considered as future options in the future.
You can't rule out future options.
Well, okay.
Not under this process. In the next process, when we do the review, that is the appropriate time to raise that.
Okay. Well,
I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I think that we were overwhelmed by numbers that we hadn't anticipated, which is why we're in the situation we're in. But we are going to go through a full review process, and that will enable us to go through all of the issues individually. But I think that the other thing is that it will give the government time to potentially intervene and play a stronger leadership role, so that we can get a uniform response so that our visitors feel welcome, but that our environment is protected. That's the competing interest that we've had described. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. We're just about to get to PX and then I'll adjourn for lunch, so just bearing that in mind. The next item